So a few weeks ago, I made this video and it stirred a little bit of controversy. A lot of you guys made some great points in your comments, and it actually inspired me to amend some of my thoughts, some of my philosophies on this idea of what really a niche fragrance is and what a niche brand is. And I actually ended up doing a pinned comment on that video telling you guys kind of my new thoughts on what it was. And a lot of you guys probably heard this in my replies to some of your comments after that fact, after I made that pinned comment. And what it ultimately comes down to for me, and I think many of you will still disagree because we can't please everyone, but I don't believe that every fragrance that comes from a niche brand is a niche fragrance. Again, I know a lot of you will disagree and say, well, if it's a niche brand, then everything they create is niche because of the definition. Look up the word. If you look up the definition, we can be blinded by broad strokes. Let's actually look at it. I choose to evaluate niche versus mainstream on a fragrance by fragrance basis. Why? Well, on the flip side of the coin, not every fragrance that comes from a mainstream brand is a mainstream fragrance. And we're going to talk about that. I have a bunch of examples here that cater to that idea. As per the title of this video, designer brands can make niche fragrances too. Now, what is niche in this regard? Well, as I've alluded to before in the previous video, it's intended for a niche audience. These are fragrances that, even though they're coming from designer and mass market brands, they're not created to appeal to as many people as possible. Also, they're not following any popular trends. While they may not be completely unlike any other fragrance out there, there are few fragrances that they share a likeness with, and they are intended to be that way. The word that people use to describe the types of designer fragrances I'm about to talk about is niche quality. And niche quality is a funny little term that's been thrown around a lot for years. And honestly, I believe niche quality is a subjective idea. Not everyone's gonna find something niche quality. Because what is that even? Does that mean it smells smooth and it smells of high quality ingredients? A fragrance can be composed of not the highest quality ingredients, but still be made in such a way, or it has focus and it has a distinctive personality. It's not a mishmash of all the most popular things in fragrances put together in order to appeal. It is actually trying to be different. And I believe these things combine to create a strong olfactory identity. And for me personally, my taste, that's what I'm looking for in a fragrance. I'm looking for something with identity, something that can only be itself. Maybe it shares some elements with other things, but it's not trying to. On the flip side, a fragrance can have relatively high quality ingredients, but be composed in such a way where it is not meant to stand out as a completely unique scent personality and profile. It is actually intended to appeal to a lot of people. It's intended to be easy to wear, to be versatile, something like Parfum de Marly Sedley. Now, the misconception is that people think I don't like fragrances like this. I love Sedley. I've worn this so much and I've enjoyed it so much. Again, it's so easy to wear. Does it smell like you would buy it for $300? No. Not because the quality isn't good, but because the scent profile smells like something that I could buy for $40. It's gonna serve the same purpose. That was the whole point of that previous video. Moving on. Some of you may already have some conflict with that. I'd love to know what that is down in the comments. But before you do that, let's talk about some fragrances that I believe, even though they come from designer brands, they are niche fragrances. We're gonna breeze through these. From Guerlain, just as an example, there's many I could choose. From the L'Homme Ideal collection, this is L'Homme Ideal Eau de Parfum. Now some people might say,
Guerlain is a niche brand because blah, 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 blah.
If we're going off of that technical definition, I'm not saying it's invalid, but if we're going off of that, Guerlain also makes makeup. So technically, they are not a niche fragrance brand, but they do strive to make fragrances that aren't made to appeal to everyone. This is one of them. This is a flanker of the original L'Homme Ideal, which I think was quite a unique fragrance. It doesn't smell totally off the wall. And what I'm talking about with niche in this regard, it doesn't mean it has to smell completely disgusting or smell like something that would be hard to wear. No, it just has to have a distinctive personality. It has to have an interest to it. It has to maybe evolve as it dries on the skin. That's not absolutely necessary, but I think it does help. And it needs to appeal to a particular audience, to a particular type of person. That's what we're going for here. This really does that. Almond and cherry and leather. That is the core DNA of this fragrance. Creamy, nutty, sweet and fruity with a leathery backbone. A lot more going on, some spices, maybe some woods in here as well. A very handsome fragrance. Also not for everyone because of how sweet it is. Not everyone loves how sweet this is. I think it's astounding. I wouldn't call it a mainstream fragrance. L'Homme Idéal Eau de Parfum. From a house that is known to not really follow all the conventions, this being one of their biggest examples, Moschino. This is Toy Boy. And this is a really strange fragrance. This is like a spicy, resinous, fresh rose scent. It has this weird waxy quality from magnolia. Again, it's a little unusual. Not the most pleasant, especially from the atomizer, but in the air, it is very distinctive. This is a specific scent personality. Only a certain type of person will find this enjoyable and be comfortable wearing it. From a designer brand, not a mainstream fragrance. From Cartier, who I think is a phenomenal standout brand that is actually striving to make interesting fragrances that pay homage to the history of perfumery and don't really care about trends all that much. This is Declaration Parfum. I could have chosen several from the brand, but this one, not for everyone, because it does have a distinctive personality. Lots of cumin in here. Spicy, dry. Some people say it's kind of sweaty smelling. Not mass appealing by any means, but incredibly elegant. Wow. Spicy, fresh, with a little bit of citrus. It's bitter. There's a lot of leather in here. It is kind of resinous in a way, kind of the way it looks. Incredible scent. Not for everyone. From Issey Miyake, we have Noir Ambre. Now, technically, this is inspired by a genre of fragrances that is not quite as popular here in the West as it is over in the East and Middle East. Ambery, warm, spicy, sweet, rich, leathery. A lot going on in here. Does smell reminiscent of, again, these more traditional Middle Eastern profiles, but way toned down, still a little bit westernized in a way, but still not for everyone, because not everyone's gonna love a super amber forward fragrance. Some people say it smells kind of lipsticky. I get what they mean by that. I think it's utterly handsome. I think it's perfectly unisex, but it's not for everyone. This one needs no introduction, and it doesn't need me to explain it. Tom Ford Black Orchid. I struggled with this fragrance for a while. For a long time, I would go into a store, I'd smell it, and I'm like, this is so interesting to me, but I don't know how I would wear this. I don't know where I would wear this. I don't know how I would feel confident wearing this fragrance. How would people perceive me? I would always just struggle with that. I gave in after smelling it so much and realized this stuff is incredible because it captivates me in such a way to the point where it makes me think and it makes me question, it challenges me. That's what I realize I'm looking for in a lot of my fragrances. A lot of you may not be looking for that. You just want to spray something on without having to think about it and get the compliments and feel good and all that stuff. But when you've smelled so many fragrances, you want to have an experience with your scent. Maybe not all the time, but maybe most of the time, at least for me. This does that for me. It is kind of polarizing. This sweet, very sweet, but kind of earthy, funky floral fragrance. Kind of has a chocolatey nuance, but also has this truffle vibe that's earthy and dark and has a bit of an edge. Interesting stuff. If you haven't tried it, you should check it out. Again, you may not like it. Just be prepared. This is definitely not a mainstream fragrance. That's why it didn't sell very well. Gucci Guilty Absolute Pour Homme did not sell well, not mainstream. Was not intended to appeal to everyone. I'm sure they hoped people would have taken better to it than they did, but they knew they were going out on a limb from a well-known designer brand, not mainstream. If you believe this is mainstream, let me know down in the comments. Please tell me your reasoning. Not the most off-the-wall scent here, but not everyone's gonna dig this. This has a bit of an old school vibe to it, but in a way that is kind of dark and earthy and introspective, definitely not mass appealing. It is discontinued, so maybe that speaks for something because it didn't sell a ton. But from Bottega Veneta, this is Pour Homme Extreme. As I said, earthy, kind of dark and green, woody, leathery, but has a smoothness to it. I don't consider this all that hard to wear because of its smooth nature, but the scent profile itself, at the core of it, it is very definitive. It does not smell like a mix of your fresh and your clean and your sweet, all these things that come together in popular mass appealing scents. Again, designer brand, they make some great leather goods, but they also make fragrances that are not intended for everyone. They're intended for a niche audience. Now we have to talk about Dior. The reason why a lot of people were upset when something like Sauvage came out was because that was the mark of a new era for Dior. I don't know if we saw it as that at the time because we didn't know what was going to come after that, but it was definitely a turning point because it was distinctly different from everything we had seen from Dior up to that point. Dior was known at the forefront of the designer market to push the boundaries, to be trendsetters, to be trailblazers, to kind of sit on the edge, sit on the brink of what is known as conventional, especially for their men's fragrances. So something like Dior Homme. What was going on before Dior Homme in regards to iris at the forefront? Not much, if anything. Waxy, lipsticky iris, sweet, and fresh with lavender, but has this nice, beautiful, leathery nuance to it. Not a mainstream scent. Fahrenheit Le Parfum took Fahrenheit, which was a trendsetter. That was a trailblazer, that was timeless. Came out in 1988, but smells like it could have come out any time, really. Nothing really smelled like that at the time. It was ahead of its time. And they took that DNA and they made it more niche, honestly, by adding lots of licorice, by adding vanilla and booze together to create this sweet, kind of strangely spicy scent. Licorice, you know, the smell of that is almost like fresh and kind of mentholic in a way, but in a strange way that's very polarizing. I've heard it's discontinued. I still can't confirm that because I've seen several different things from different sources, but I don't think this thing is flying off the shelves by the average consumer. Not a mainstream scent, meant for a niche audience. I would call it a niche fragrance. That's just me. Lalique, they are also known to not care all that much about trends or what is popular, and this fragrance really tells that. This is even a safer bet than its original. This is Encre Noire à l'Extrême. The original Encre Noire is even more niche, if you will. This is resinous, earthy, vetiver, woody, and dry. Has a handsome quality to it, very dark, almost inky in a way, but nowhere near as much as the original. But most people may not really dig this stuff. This was not intended to appeal to as many people as possible. And finally, Hermes. Hermes is also a brand that is known to have put out some very iconic fragrances. Fragrances with distinctive personalities, with true identity to them. They stand out from the rest because they are not like the rest. Terre d'Hermes from the mid-2000s. A fragrance that I hated when I first smelled it. It was so divisive for me. It smelled like nothing else I'd smelled before. I had to give it that. But it smelled unwearable. It smelled dirty and weirdly citrusy and very spicy. And I'm like, I smell like an old building or something. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but after coming around to it, I realized this is just a very distinctive personality. It is what it is. There's really no reinterpreting it. Either you're going to like it or you're not going to like it, or maybe you'll grow to love it. That's what I did. Not intended for everyone, intended for a specific person. A lot of people would say some kind of dapper gentleman who carries themselves well, who dresses well, who does characterize masculinity in a lot of ways. Some people would say those things. Whatever you want to tie to it, it has focus. And same goes for this fragrance here. Un Jardin sur le Nil. Perhaps a little bit more easygoing than Terre d'Hermes, might appeal to a few more people, but still very particular. And this whole collection is beautiful. This fragrance was composed by Jean-Claude Ellena, same with Terre d'Hermes, and it's transportive. It's a combination of elements that does not smell like it's going to get you compliments in the club. It smells like watery green vegetal freshness. Kind of floral. You get lotus flower, which is that watery nuance. You have carrot. It's a strange mixture of things that smells very natural. It smells like something you would smell in nature, but it smells like something that's supposed to captivate the wearer. This is supposed to challenge the wearer. Maybe not necessarily make them fit in like a lot of designer fragrances do. This makes you stand out, but in a very different way, in a softer way. Again, a focused personality and profile that will only appeal to certain types of people. Not every Joe Schmo Blow who walks through Macy's is gonna pick this up. Oh yeah, I'm gonna wear this to the club tonight. No, this ain't the one for that. Niche. Okay, now the floodgates are open. You're free to come at me in the comments, but do so peacefully. That's all I ask. Don't try to attack me. Don't try to offend me. None of that works. Tell me what you think. Be an adult. Share your thoughts. If you disagree, but don't come from my heart. Just tell me what you think. I'll do the same. Maybe we'll go back and forth. Maybe we'll come to an agreement. Maybe we won't, and we'll go our separate ways. So be it, but it doesn't have to become personal. If you take this personally, you take this too seriously. Thank you so much for tuning in. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.